So I already have this whole new Unity scene. If you want to follow along, if you want me to give you just a minute for you to load up your own Unity scene, let me know. If not, I'm just going to get started. I'll take that as a no. So this is a brand new Unity scene. There's nothing in here. So first thing we need to do is actually install ProBuilder. So for that, we want to go to Window, Package Manager. And once this loads, you want to scroll through and find ProBuilder in this list and just press install. And you'll notice there are these 4 samples here. These bottom 2 are just examples. These 2 up here are for if you're using universal render pipeline or high definition render pipeline. I'll go into exactly what these 2 samples do in just a few minutes. I didn't press install. Just give that a minute to finish.
I think since I'm using a different version, my package manager looks a little bit different. Took me a
So
second.
did they change it for 2020?
Yeah, for you, it automatically says all packages in the top left. But for me, I had to like specify that I wanted Unity registry packages. So I don't know if anyone else is using a different version. Maybe keep an eye out for that.
Taking a little longer than it normally does. How's everyone's day been?
Doing all right.
Silence, okay.
A Wednesday, you know.
Finishing up that homework while I'm watching.
Quick question while we wait.
Yes.
You said this is the Unity Pro. Is there a difference between a Pro and a Personal?
The thing is just called ProBuilder. It has nothing to do with Unity Pro.
Oh, okay.
It's just the name of the thing. 2 completely separate things.
Okay.
So ProBuilder is installed now, and then there's one more thing that we're going to want to do. So you want to go up to Advanced, Show Preview Packages. And this is just something that isn't required, but it'll help you a lot when you're working with Unity, and that's ProGrids. It's only available under the preview packages, so you have to do Advanced, Show Preview Packages, and then just install that. And basically what ProGrids does is you snap anything in your scene to a grid, which is extremely useful, especially when you're building to get perfectly sized shapes and everything.
Quick question.
Yes.
Are there any? Actually, I'm sorry, I answered my own question. What I was gonna ask was like, how are there any like big differences between like ProBuilder for 3D and ProBuilder for like 2D, or if there even is a ProBuilder for 2D?
There isn't a ProBuilder for 2D, no.
There isn't. Okay.
But they do have. Unity does have a sprite system, like a sprite grid system. I forget what the name is, but that's essentially what you use instead of ProBuilder for 2D.
Okay. What was it called?
Can you say that again?
Oh, sorry. What did you say the sprite system was called?
I don't remember the exact name. It was
Okay, it's okay. All right, thank you.
Sprite something. Yeah, you'd have to look into it. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all right. Thank you.
I have a question about that ProGrids package you were just showing.
Yes.
It's not showing up on mine. For some reason.
Did you go up to Advanced and select Show Preview Packages?
Let me try again. I don't think so.
Yeah, so you need to
Right.
check Show Preview Packages off because ProGrids is hidden under the Preview Packages in Unity.
Okay, cool. Yep, there it is. Thank you.
All right, cool. And then with ProGrids installed, you'll immediately see this little thing pop up on the left. I'm going to change this back to its default. So there's a bunch of options here. I'll explain what these do in just a quick minute. But to actually get started with ProBuilder, we want to go to Tools at the top, ProBuilder, and then ProBuilder window. And it'll pop up this little menu here. And then this is just a regular Unity menu. You can just slap it wherever you want. I personally like it on the left over here. And then we can start by creating shape. So if we press this button, it creates just a regular 1x1x1 cube. And then if we press this plus button, it actually gives us options for multiple different shapes. You can see we can select from sprite, which is just plain basically. They have prisms, stairs, which are probably one of the most useful ones, and a bunch of other different shapes you can toy around with. Each of these have their own settings that you can mess around with to get exactly what you need. I highly recommend you toy around with this. I'm not going to go into great detail about all these ones just because they're pretty self-explanatory. It's just a lot. But I'm basically going to be working with this cube, and first I'm going to, no, not that one, this one.
Bill, can you say one more time how you got the ProBuilder panel on the left?
Yeah, so you just at the top go to Tools, ProBuilder, and then ProBuilder window.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah. So when you create a new shape, you should just get this 1x1x1 cube. And then if you press the plus button, you have the option of selecting multiple different types of preset shapes, and you can customize them to your liking. But starting with this 1x1 cube, the first thing you'll see is this texture, this gridded texture right here, which is extremely useful. If you're using URP or HDRP, those packages that were in the asset manager, those will actually give you this texture, but redone for your specific render pipeline. So if you're using one of those render pipelines, by default, you'll just get a gray cube. So if you want this texture, which I would highly recommend in those pipelines, you need to install that package and find it. So moving on, you'll see that now that we have ProBuilder open, these 4 buttons at the top have shown up. This first button on the left is Object Selection. This is just your regular Unity select mode. This next one is Vertex Selection. And if you click, you can see that the vertexes on this cube have little points that we can select now. And if we drag them around, it'll actually change the mesh on the object to match how we change this vertex. And then the same thing applies for these next 2 buttons, Edge Selection. Every edge shows up, and we can edit them to our liking. And you'll notice that everything is snapping to the 1x1 grid, and that's because I have ProGrids here on the left. And then we have the last option, Face Selection, which is just you can select any face and edit the object to your liking. And going a little more into ProGrids, we have this button here, which is just shows off. The second button from the top shows off this grid in 3D space. I personally find it kind of annoying. If you find it useful, I'd recommend doing it. It's great if you need a quick grid reference for a wall. This button, toggle snapping on and off if you want to temporarily disable it for something. This button here, if you have an object that is not on your grid, say you already made it, this button will just auto snap it, which is useful if you're installing ProGrids to an old project. This one, I'll get into that in just a second. If you have the grid turned on, you can change which plane you're looking at through these 4 options on the bottom. The X X-plane, Y-plane, Z-plane, or all three of them. And this one will lock it in place. So if I go back to object selection and I drag it, you'll see that the reference planes don't move around. But if I do this, it'll change in accordance to where my object is. So this is just useful if you need a reference for how to space out your terrain. So I'll send this back to 0, 0. And then, so I'm going to turn this back off. So the first thing I'll start with is just by creating a basic floor. And then so over here on the left, there's a bunch of different options for editing your material, and they change depending on which mode you have, and different ones are available depending on which ones you've selected and how many you've selected. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edge Selection, click on one of these edges, and click Insert Edge Loop. And what you'll see what that does is it creates an edge loop around the object that is perpendicular to the edge that you selected, and then you can just click and drag this around to wherever you want. Notice if I drag it past the edge of the object, the mesh gets messed up. So because this edge loop is supposed to be in the middle of the object, and now it's outside, rendering gets messed up. So that's something you need to be careful of. And when you start working with more complex meshes, it's something you really need to look out for. So I have this loop, and then you'll see that it's now split this face up into multiple parts. So if I select this face and drag it around, you'll notice that it comes at a slant now because they are now two separate faces that are connected by this one edge. And if, say, I want to drag this face up but leave this face where it is, if I press on the left extrude faces, it extrudes this face out, and I can modify it how I like without worrying about this edge here being dragged up with this face. So, and then some other options that you have are merge faces. If you use Control-click to select two faces, you can piece them back together. I guess that didn't work because I extruded this face, which is why that didn't work. But say these side faces here, you see that this edge disappeared because I merged the two faces together. And then some of the other options that are here, I kind of did that in the wrong order. I'm just going to quickly make a new one. Cool. So some of the other things you can do are, say you only want an edge on one side of the object for whatever reason. What you can do is you can select two different edges and select over here on the left, connect edges, and that'll create a new edge that connects the midpoints of both of those edges. So now I only have one edge here that doesn't loop around the object. If I wanted to say, only edit this without doing anything to the bottom side here. So I'm going to select these two edges, connect these, and on this side, I'm going to insert a loop, and then insert another loop. And I'm going to take this square, and I'm going to raise it up. So I have to extrude this first, and there's a shortcut to that. If you just press Shift and then drag, it'll automatically extrude it for you without having to press the button. There's a lot of shortcuts for a lot of these buttons, especially the common ones that you'll use on the left. I personally don't know all of them. I'm still learning them. They are available on the Unity webpage somewhere. If you just look up ProBuilder shortcuts, you'll find it pretty easily. But they're extremely useful to learn. I highly recommend you do. I still need to do them myself. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to expand this out. I'm going to Control-click to select all of these faces and just drag this out. And then say I want to create a little pool or something here in the center. What I could do is I could do what I did before and just create more edge loops to create a little square in the center. Or another option is if I have this face selected and select the scaling tool, you'll notice that if I drag it, it kind of drags these edges with them. But if I hold shift and drag it, it kind of duplicates the face. And now I have a smaller square inside of this bigger square. And then what I can do is I can drag this down using shift to extrude it downwards, and you'll see I have this little hole here. And then if you go underneath, you'll notice that this face down here doesn't look right. And that's because we basically dragged the top half and sent it through the bottom half. So what we need to do is actually do the same thing on the other side. So if I do this and shrink it down to about the same size, scaling does not work with ProGrids, so you just want to be careful and keep that in mind. You can see this line right here, barely visible. I'm going to make it slightly bigger than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these faces and drag them downwards using extrude them downwards, and you'll see that it carries this outer edge is dragged along with it, and it creates a visible wall around the outside. So that removes the issue of dragging the top half of the object through itself. So that's just some of the basics of just editing objects. There's a bunch of other things you can toy with. Where is it? One of the more common ones is going to be flip normals. This is great for making interiors. It just flips the normals of the object. You'll notice that if I move my camera inside, it basically looks like an interior hallway now, just very tiny. There is the mirror objects button, which you can use to mirror an object. You can choose which axis you want to mirror it on. The duplicate button will create a new object instead of just so that you can keep your old one if you want it. And then say you wanted to have this hole, fill this hole back up. There are multiple ways to do it. One of them is if you select all the edges around here and then you press connect edges. Okay, well, maybe that didn't work. Say I accidentally deleted this face. If I select all these edges here and press connect edges, if ProBuilder will cooperate. Okay, maybe it won't cooperate this time. Sometimes it doesn't work. But what it should do is it should just put that face back together. Let's see if it'll work here. Okay, well, I don't know why that's not working. It's worked before. That's something else. Oh wait, no. I'm just pressing the wrong button. It's supposed to be fill hole. Yeah, press fill hole, not connect edges. Connect edges is the other button I was talking about earlier. My bad. But there are lots of different options you can choose. I highly recommend just toying around with them if you want to learn more. These red buttons on the bottom are generally editing objects. These green buttons here are for dealing with normals and UVs and all that. These blue buttons usually have to do with selection. So you'll notice that if I select this edge and select, okay, well that, let's say I create an edge loop here. If I say select this edge and then press select edge loop, if I want to reselect the entire loop, this button will do that for me. Grow selection will grow your selection depending on what you have selected. You'll notice that it added any connecting edges to my selection. And then same thing will work for faces. It'll add this entire plane of faces to my selection. If you have a bunch of different subfaces like I have here, it's really useful if you want to select the whole thing and modify it a little bit. Some of the other buttons, center pivot, this will adjust the pivot to the center of the object. So it also works if I have a face selected. It will center the pivot according to the faces. There's set trigger, which changes the whole collider to a trigger. You can change it back to a collider. Triangulate will turn your mesh into triangles, which subdivides it. There's also subdivide object, which splits every face into quarters instead of triangles. One of the more interesting features is Bevel, which you'll see if I do kind of cuts a corner out of an edge. And this is really useful if you want to use it to do makeshift modeling, to make rounder edges, since it's not something you can do with just straight cubes. And you'll notice that if I make this a little smaller and press Bevel again, it gets smoother and smoother. And at some point, it'll do this, which means basically that your bevel is too big and that your mesh is causing issues. Your mesh and edges are causing issues. They're overlapping with each other and they're causing issues, which is why that'll happen. So you just need to be careful. Something else you need to be careful with if you want to use Bevel is that there's no way to undo this other than pressing the undo button. You'll see that if I say modify one of these edges, I can easily move it back or merge two faces together to remove an edge. There's no way to fix beveling. So if you're going to use Bevel, I would highly recommend creating a backup of the object and storing that somewhere, either in a scene or prefab maybe. And then if you ever want to edit that object again, instead of just recreating it from scratch because you can't undo the bevel, just reference that old object and re-bevel it. So those are some of the basics for how to get started with ProBuilder. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start making just a quick little level. I have a reference pulled up to my side here that I'm going to use to create a level. So I'm going to start with just a basic cube, and I'm going to use the face selection to drag it out and create a little platform here. And then I'm going to use this button, New Poly Shape, to draw out a shape. So I'm going to, basically what this tool does is it allows you to draw out custom shapes instead of just working from scratch with, say, a cube. Once you click on something, it'll always stay in a plane parallel to that. So if I click out here, say, you'll notice that it's in this same plane. If you have ProGrids turned on, this is useful for, this is one instance where it's really useful, where you can just use that reference plane to know where you're drawing. And once you create an object, you can extrude it out to whatever distance you like. So I'm going to go into isometric view. I'm going to use this grid and the new poly shape tool to draw out just shape. Looks a little something like this. And then I'm going to drag it out to a width of about 5. I'm going to turn off this grid, get out of isometric mode, and I'm going to place it back here. And then I'm going to shift this up to the side just a little bit And you'll notice that the axis on this poly shape that I made is reversed. It's because I drew it on the z-plane. If I draw it on this plane here, you'll notice that the axis is normal, and then if you click here on one that I drew on a different plane, the rotation is different. It just does that. ProBuilder just does that when you draw on a different plane. If it annoys you, you'll have to get used to it. It kind of sucks, but if I want to revert this, you'll notice that it's not really the shape that I need anymore, and especially not the position I need anymore. So you kind of just have to live with it. It annoys me, but I haven't found a workaround to being able to fix this axis rotation and also keeping it in the shape and position that I want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a few extrusions to this in a shape that I want. I want to keep this back wall, the back wall of this level, all one cohesive piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this edge, these two edges, and connect them, and drag this edge down a little. And I'm going to create another smaller edge here. And now I have a little tiny 1x1 face in this corner, and I'm going to extrude this outwards by shift clicking and dragging outwards. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this bottom face. Connect these two edges, drag this over, and then connect these two. And you'll notice that because this edge is shorter than this edge, this new edge is kind of tilted because it connected the endpoints, which weren't even. To fix that, we can just select Vertex Selection and just drag the individual vertices to the position that we want them. And I'm just going to take these faces, select both of them with Control click, and then extrude them downwards with Shift click. Now I have this back wall, and I have this little chunk which is thinner than the back wall. So I'm going to select this entire back area, and I'm going to turn off ProGrids real quick, just quickly compress this a little bit. And then I'm going to do a similar thing over on this side. I'm going to insert another edge using connect edges. And then I'm going to drag this over to create another little 1x1 square in the corner that I can use. Extrude this outwards, and the same thing on this side. And I'm going to drag this outwards, extrude it outwards. Otherwise, you'll get that little edge dragging. That. So now I have the main back piece, which is all one cohesive collider of this back wall, this platform to the left, and this thinner wall to the right. And then I'm going to add in a new cube for a separate chunk of this level. Just drag it into position here. And I'm going to expand it outwards a little. And I'm going to compress this into a slope by taking this front edge here and just dragging it backwards like that to create a little slope. And then from here, I'm going to create a back wall for this back wall. So I'm going to add another cube. I'm just going to drag this into position. And I'm going to expand this cube to cover the entire back side of this wall. And now, what I want to do is I want to cut a hole in this wall. So there is a experimental tool in ProBuilder that you can use to cut holes in other objects, but a much easier way to do it is to select both sides of the face, or both sides of the object that you want to cut the hole in, go to the scale tool, and just scale it down like I did earlier to the position that you want, and then just delete those faces. And now I have a hole in my mesh, but you'll see that these corners are the insides of this wall don't have any meshes. So first I'm going to adjust this to the size that I want. So I'm going to take these corners and just drag them to where I want them, which is here. Select this, there we go. Drag this out a little. These ones too. You'll notice that this mesh, it's kind of tilted inwards a little bit. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to there we go. Inwards a little, so I'm going to drag that out to fix that. Interesting. I don't know how I did that. Yeah, it's just something you need to keep an eye out for when you're editing meshes, is sometimes it'll do stuff like that. So I'm going to move these two edges to here, abouts. Make this straight. And then what I can do to fill in this lack of a mesh here is I'm going to select these 4 edges of one side. If I can select this edge. There we go. Come on. Come on. And then I'm going to shift drag them outwards, and that essentially extrudes them out. And now I have a proper wall surrounding this inner part of my hole. So now I have a back wall with a giant hole in it. So I have this main part of my level, and then I want another little section up here. So for that, I'm going to make another cube. Drag this up, and I'm going to expand this a little bit. Move it into position a little bit. And then I'm going to duplicate this object with Control D, shift this over here, and then on this one, I am going to, this time I'm going to use Insert Edge Loop, just because it's a little faster. And I'm going to shift this snap value 0.5, so that instead of to the 1x1 grid, ProGrids will now snap everything to the 0.5 grid. I'm just going to drag that down here. I'm going to insert another edge loop. And I'm going to take this tiny little edge and extrude it outwards. And then I'm going to now extrude it in this direction by creating another edge loop. And now I have this little hook area with a hole in the center of it. And then on this object, I'm going to do a similar thing by just creating another edge loop. And I'm going to drag this face out to create a little platform. And I'm going to drag both of these faces out to create another. Oh, I don't want this face selected here. I just want these two. Let's drag these out like that. And some of you might notice that this general structure looks a little familiar. And that is because, pull up my reference, this is actually just the general structure of this level from Super Mario Sunshine. So you'll notice that in the span of maybe 10-15 minutes, I've recreated the general layout of this level. All that's really missing are the 4 platforms that are right here. So I could easily do that just by adding new cubes and then resizing them to about what I want. And just duplicating this a little thicker than what they're supposed to be, but oh well. And I have what is essentially this level. You could, if you had a platform controller, you could jump around, test this out, see what it feels like. The only thing that's really missing are some of the more finer details on this back wall, this chunk here, this advanced part. You could easily do that just by creating more edge loops or connecting edges and extruding it outwards. It would just take a little bit of time. This trampoline here, which obviously I don't have. One difference is that this platform is actually supposed to be hollow, but I didn't do that for the sake of time. And the reason I made this whole back piece one mesh is because in here, this is actually also one mesh. Actually, the whole thing is one mesh. I just only did it for this piece for the sake of simplicity, but you'll see that the texture smoothly transitions from this lower part of the wall to the back part of the wall. That's because it's all one piece of geometry, which you can easily do with ProBuilder just like that by creating edge loops and connecting edges and extruding them outwards. So that's basically a lot of what I had to say. Does anyone want me to explain anything in more detail or take a deeper dive into anything? Or have any questions?
So I have a question.
Yes.
I did not know you were making a Super Mario Sunshine level, but I really appreciate that. Did you use NoClip to get your screenshots?
There was a website you sent a while ago.
NoClip.website?
Probably.
Yeah, okay. I thought so, because I was like, how would you know how they designed that mesh? But yeah, no, that's a good one. Anyone who didn't see my post from a while ago at this point, noclip.website just has video game levels that you can like fly a camera around. It's super cool. Oh, I have another question actually. When you made the giant window in the back wall,
Yes.
you made it by just extruding one edge loop into the other edge loop. Do you actually have in the back of the window, are there 2 edge loops like perfectly overlapping each other now?
There are. If ProBuilder will let me select, there we go. If I drag this out, you'll see that there are 2 edges here still. So they're just 2 edges overlapping each other.
Can you merge them together if you want to?
You could take the vertices of the 2 edges and merge those together.
Okay. Cool. I'll open the floor to anyone else.
I just want to say that I was really mind blown when you showed that it was a sunshine level as well. That was really
Yeah.
cool.
If you have a general layout of what you want to build, you can easily slap it together with ProBuilder. If you, even just with the basic tools, you'll notice I didn't really use any of the advanced stuff. It was a lot of just edge loops and connecting edges and extruding over and over and over. So even if you just know that, you can create a lot of basic levels if you know, if you have a general feel of what you want to do. Or even if you don't, and you just want to throw stuff together, because I do, honestly just do that sometimes. Just start throwing shapes together until something works in ProBuilder.
Dope. Yeah.
Anything else?
Quick question.
Yes.
This seems like an incredible tool for sort of gray boxing, quick sketching out a level. Would there ever be a circumstance where you would find a model based on a ProBuilder build like this in sort of the final product, or is this more of a quick prototyping tool?
It depends on the structure of the project. For example, the project we did in Game Lab last semester, they used, at least I'm pretty sure they used ProBuilder to create the geometry and collision, but they just disabled this mesh and then replace it with actual like environment art. Alternatively, you could just have just the straight ProBuilder geometry and just replace the texture on it, which is what me and the other SGDA officers did last semester for our bowling game during the game jam. All that geometry was made in ProBuilder, and then it was just retextured, including the more advanced stuff like the bowling ball dispenser was also made entirely using ProBuilder, and same with the bowling alley. I would have those examples here to show off, but there are some issues with importing from different pipelines to just the standard Unity project. So I unfortunately don't have those right now.
Cool.
But you could, yes.
I'm pretty sure Super Hot, all that in the end is ProBuilder. I heard it from somewhere. I could be wrong. So I guess it sort of depends on your aesthetic as well.
Yeah.
Where did you hear that from? That's really cool.
I
actually just
don't
found
know.
it
That's
earlier.
why I like.
It's on ProBuilder's website.
Okay,
What?
that's probably it. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. It makes sense though, because a lot of super hot stuff is just rooms that are decorated with various objects. So you could easily just slap some rooms together with ProBuilder and then decorate them.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Sorry if I was moving a little fast for anyone to follow, but if you have any other questions, just feel free to message me anytime. I'm happy to answer anything. And that's just about everything I have to show.
Cool. All right. Well, then I guess we can wrap up a little early for the night. So, thank you,
I
Bill,
went
for
through that a
hosting the
lot faster
workshop.
than I expected.
You're too good. All right, yeah, no, it's no problem. I mean, you hit all your points, I think. So, I appreciate it. Well, everybody, thank you so much for coming out. I guess we can call it a night. Have a good one.
Thank you, you too.
Yeah, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you guys.